For as long as I can remember, I dreamed of performing on a stage on Broadway. You see, I was a theater major in college over 35 years ago, and I still have that dream of being on stage on Broadway. But you know, life's journey has many twists and turns, and like so many others, my path to the drug abuse prevention field was not a straight one. So instead of performing on the Great White Way, I now have a different kind of stage, a national stage, to talk about an issue that I'm very passionate about: preventing drug abuse among college students. Why should we be concerned about this? Well, the numbers from the Monitoring the Future study don't lie. In 2017, nearly 33% of full-time college students reported binge drinking. That's 5 or more drinks in a row at one occasion in the past 2 weeks. And in 2017, 21% of full-time college students reported using marijuana in the past month. And according to the American College Health Association, in 2017, nearly 10% of college students reported using a prescription drug once or more times in the past year that was not prescribed to them. When I worked at the U.S. Department of Education from 1999 until 2008, we had a grant program where we identified campuses that had an effective drug abuse prevention on their campus. And from 1999 until 2004, we identified 22 such programs on those campuses. And in 2006, we wanted to take a closer look at those 22 schools and see if there were key elements, were there core components of their program that made them successful. And in 2007, we published a document called Experiences in Effective Prevention. And it was in that publication we outlined the 7 core elements of an effective drug abuse prevention on college campuses. And why am I talking about it today, more than 10 years later? Because I believe that those 7 core elements are as relevant today as they were when we first identified them more than a decade ago. And so today, I'm going to walk you through those 7 key elements to an effective drug abuse prevention program on college campuses. So the first key element is leadership. Now, we know on a college campus that leadership can come in many forms: the college or university president, the vice president for student affairs, a faculty member, a student, and certainly leaders in the surrounding community. But on every model program campus, it was the knowledge and skill of the drug abuse prevention coordinator that was widely recognized as the single most important contributor to the program's success. The second core element is building coalitions. Now, mobilizing a coalition has long been recognized as an essential component of a drug abuse prevention program. And why is that? Because drug abuse prevention is so complex that it really cannot fall on the shoulders of just one person. I have a longtime colleague of mine who was at Western Washington University. Her name is Pat Fabiano. And Pat talked about this process of building coalitions as having 100 cups of coffee. And what she meant by that were the number of times that she sat down and listened to potential partners, talked with them about their shared interest and mutual goals, to building a coalition and a safer campus. Now, the third core element is choosing an evidence-based program. Now, it seems simple enough, but many times it feels like this. In practice, choosing evidence-based programs is not that simple. Evidence is actually made up of the pieces that we put together. But here are just a few examples of why it's not an easy process. So program developers are out to sell or promote their program, and they may use words like effective, proven, model, often without any regard to the actual quality of the research that's behind their program. So when you consider purchasing a product that describes itself as evidence-based, you need to do your homework. You need to ask for the data supporting the effectiveness of their program. Just because the program or the product looks nice and shiny and it's new or it's less expensive, that does not necessarily mean that it's an effective program. We're no longer at a point that we don't know what works. In fact, we do know what works thanks to 30 years plus of prevention science to guide us. Now, aside from knowing what works, we also need to know how it works. Prevention is not a cookie-cutter process. It never has been, and it never will be a one-size-fits-all type of situation. But see, that's the tricky part. Finding the right balance between adapting that evidence-based program to fit your local needs while staying true to the fidelity of the program's design. So be aware that anytime you change a program from how it was initially designed, you might compromise the outcomes. So at the very least, if you can, work with the program developers to talk to them about what it is that you want to modify or adapt. Or at the very least, contact somebody who has evaluation experience and expertise who can talk through it with you and find out what it is that you want to do. Now, the fourth core element is implementing strategic planning, which brings us back to this picture. Prevention is not random. Let me repeat that. Prevention is not random. It is intentional, it is purposeful, and it must be strategic. Strategic planning is woven throughout all of our prevention efforts. So in our timeline, we're strategic about when our efforts will take place. In our direction, we're strategic where we want our efforts to take us. In our ideas, we're strategic about what we want to accomplish. One of the struggles, though, that we face in prevention is impatience. And there is pressure from so many different fronts to produce results quickly. And because of that, sometimes people will rush to replicate a program that they heard about on another campus or in a community in their setting without even knowing whether or not it's the right program for their campus or community, whether it's the right fit. You actually don't even know if it's going to produce the outcomes that you're hoping for. So we need to be very strategic in the type of program that we plan to implement. So the fifth core element is conducting a program evaluation. Now, wouldn't it be nice if evaluating prevention efforts is this simple? Well, sometimes it is, but most times it's not. For me, the word time is the operative word in this slide. See, evaluation cannot be seen as an afterthought. When I started my federal career at the U.S. Department of Education, we awarded a lot of grants under the Safe and Drug-Free Schools program, and looking back, I think evaluation was oftentimes seen as an afterthought by the applicants submitting their proposals for funding, that it was something to be done after the program was finished. But you know, that was almost 20 years ago, and we have evolved a lot since then. We now know that evaluations are most useful when they are planned at the same time as the program implementation, not at the very end when the program is finished. The sixth core element is working towards sustainability. The best time to think about sustaining your program is at the beginning. Think for yourself, where do you see your program in 3 years from now? In 5 years from now, in 10 years from now? That's the type of thinking that you need to be doing to start building sustainability. The 22 model programs that we had worked with found that the best way to sustain their program's efforts were to tie the program to a larger set of issues that the campus community cares about. So I'm going to name some issues, and I want you to picture in your mind, how does drug abuse prevention connect to each one of them? Student retention and success, student health, campus security, fiscal management. Another key factor is your ability to promote the program's importance. I stay attuned to the issues that affect my alma mater. And one of those issues is transition in senior leadership, especially among the president. Since 1990, in 18 years, my alma mater has had 12 presidents. 18 years, 12 presidents. And yet the university's drug abuse prevention program has continued through all that time. Now, does it look the same now as it did 20 years ago? Of course not. But there are elements that remain. Just to name a few, there's the Alcohol and Drug Abuse Prevention Task Force. There's the Student Peer Education Program. There's the Campus and Community Coalition. They have sustained because the staff there has made the case for why those efforts must be retained. So the last thing that I want to highlight about working towards sustainability is this. Prevention efforts can never rest on the energy, the vision, and the skills of just one person. What happens to the program or to the coalition when that person leaves? Working towards sustainability really does rely upon identifying and training other staff as well as volunteers to assume leadership positions when the time comes. The seventh and final core element is taking the long view. The work we do in prevention is really hard work. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. How many times have you heard that drug abuse prevention is fluff or it's touchy-feely? Always push back against that kind of thinking. The work that's being done on college campuses and in their surrounding communities, the serious consequences related to alcohol and drug abuse, including sexual assaults, fights, failing grades, dropping out of school, and unfortunately, the worst consequence of all, death. That is all very serious business, and it should never be referred to as fluff. The leaders of the 22 model programs that we studied have several pieces of advice on how to take the long view. First, learning from each other prevention experts, that's essential. We can and do learn from each other, and in fact, our prevention efforts really do rely on that. Second, ongoing training and technical assistance is critical. Look for opportunities online to view a webinar. There are a lot of low-cost and no-cost options out there to build your own capacity and knowledge on this issue. And third, there will be setbacks, no doubt about it. So be flexible. Accept the fact that the prevention program that you so carefully laid out and planned, it might not go as you thought it would. That's okay. It's all part of the process. Some critics claim the problem is intractable, that if students are intent on engaging in underage drinking or other drug use, then nothing can be done to stop them. I'm here to ask you to ignore those critics. The fact is, student alcohol and drug abuse, it is not intractable. In fact, we have made great strides in preventing drug abuse among college students over the last 20 years, and we will continue to do so. Thank you.